A little background here was a magazine he started himself about 10 years ago because he was very dissatisfied with the journalism here in Japan concerning rock. And it was mainly composed of articles and whatnot by fans of music, and sort of a journal in that sense. And it has since been polished into this kind of a thing, although it's still based on articles written by
contributors.
Yeah, contributors.
Yeah, when we came to Japan, it was one of the magazines one of the few magazines we really liked. We really like this magazine. This is a very good magazine.
No, it's just that the chair was here.
And the groups that are in this magazine are groups in some ways we feel a bit of an affiliation towards. We were very concerned that U2 should be put in with a lot of other pop groups and sort of smiling pretty boys, and sort of, we just wanted to separate from them. I like this magazine. I think it's a good one. We've been asking about it for the last week.
Is that right?
About doing this interview.
Yeah,
Ellen Newberry.
It's a readership based on university students who are looking very forward to this interview. So.
Well, so
he was told to hold back on this one, actually. He saw your concert on the third day. Apparently on the first day, you made a comment about the TV appearance.
Yes, how you two had entered the world of show business.
Right, and he was wondering if this is something you do wherever you go. Is it like
TV like that?
Yeah, like that kind of TV program. Because, that's the typical really pop, pretty boy type of program.
Yeah.
To see you guys on that was sort of incongruent.
Yeah, that's why we made the comment. And that's why, because, in fact, we had, the way we felt about the show was, somebody sent us over a cassette of the show, and it was so incongruous that it appealed to us. we thought this is it was so bizarre, with all the people in the evening dress and everything, that we could get into it, So that's why we brought our cameras, and we took photographs of the people, and we decided to play the role of tourists, shake everybody's hands, and we told them that we'd always wanted to meet them and everything. It was sort of an experiment from our point of view, but we felt the guitar broke down in the middle of it. It was good. That was probably the best thing that could happen.
Would you do it again?
No.
You wouldn't. As rock musicians, it would be impossible to survive, at least financially, without commercialism of the business. At least commercialism on the level of publicity and whatnot.
Yep.
It must be rough to keep a distance from that. In other words, not get too sucked into it, but then again, utilize it to the extent that you can further your own career or your own following and whatnot. How do you maintain your stance? What sort of stance do you maintain?
I think a mistake a lot of artists make is that they say, this music, this is art. The business, I have a manager of a record company, I have an agent, and they are machines that I put my art through to get to the masses. Now, we don't look at it like that. We look at some aspects of the business as also part of the art. When we started the group, I was 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, and U2 so far has been a learning process for us in many areas, in the creation of music. Remember, we formed U2 before we could play any instruments. So it was learning how to play instruments, learning how to be U2, but also learning about film. We've co-directed all our videos. Learning about graphics, our covers are all designed by us. Learning about business, working out deals. Creativity can be in many, many areas. I wish people would realize this. People often, they work in jobs and they say, my job is no creative. you know, and a writer in a magazine such as Rockin. He also has something to offer. You know what I'm trying to get at.
Sure. It's kind of a typical pattern or routine in rock for the artist to go from the anti-hero to the hero, and he kind of sees you guys on that sort of a I don't know what you call it, maybe a conveyor belt, and he's wondering how do you see yourself in 5 years?
How do you see yourself in 5 years? I mean, I have enough trouble trying to see myself in the mirror at the moment, you know what I mean? Or having time. We don't think about the future to a great extent. We have some sort of goal, you know? Some sort of goal, like a light in the distance that we go for. But as I was saying to somebody recently, it's not where we're going so much as how we get there. It's an exercise in 4 people. I mean, what U2 is about. Talk about the anti-hero and the hero. If there's any heroism in U2, is in the music. It's in the emotions. It's in the humanity of the music. As 4 people, by our very natures, we're hardly cartoon cut-out pop stars. We come from Ireland. We go out for 6 months in the year, and we take our music to anybody who wants to hear it. The more, the better. And we retreat then back to Ireland, and we make more music. The music comes first. If our friend is worried about the fact that, you know, U2 are sort of catapulted into sort of mega-ness, our ambition has always been to replace the mega artists, the dinosaurs. When we started, it was punk rock. It was 1976 in London. We were the original garage band from Garageland. And we were the original non-musicians. It's taken us 3 LPs, 4 LPs to learn how to play those instruments, to learn how to be U2. And always our intention was that we had turned on the radio. It felt to us like the needle had got stuck in European music, in American music, in rock and roll. And we intended to replace that with our music because we believe that our music has a vitality.
How are you going to maintain it? Whereas everybody else seems to fall by the wayside with something
well, maybe we won't.
What do you think makes a band lose its vitality?
There are bribes offered to groups all along the way in their career. And I don't mean money.
To just stay static.
Very, very subtle bribes to undermine a group's integrity. But some groups have goals to achieve this level of success, or to do that with their music, or to be number 1, or to be number 2, or to whatever. So when they achieve those goals, they have nothing left. They're empty. You take a group like the Who, or early Who, it really inspired you to. What happened now? Where have they gone? What you must, if your goal is an abstract goal, if your goal is an artistic one, you never reach it. So you're always hungry. You two are hungrier now and thirstier now, artistically, for our music than we've ever been. And that is quite true. And I can't answer the question. I can't say to you in 5 years' time, you two will still be this hungry and this thirsty. All I know is that right now we are.
Should offer one disclaimer here. He said a second ago, why don't you just cut the translation so we can get as much interview as possible. So what we do afterwards is we go and very carefully translate this into Japanese.
Okay.
Offer you some peace of mind here. It's kind of a rough question. It might not be that rough. He hears that you're very strong believers in Christianity, and especially, apparently, Larry, you became more of a believer like after your mother was in an accident of some sort, according to his sources. He wants to know what the effects of Christianity are on you as people and or musicians.
There's been a lot of talk about U2 in this area, probably too much talk, and writers and journalists have tried to put U2 in a box since we began. You know, at first they wanted to call us a punk rock band, and they wanted to call us a psychedelic band, they wanted to call us this, they wanted to call us that. We've always avoided tags, we've always avoided compartmentalization, if you like. That's why we call the group U2, because it was an ambiguous name. So people have looked now into our private lives to try and find in there ways in which they can tag us and hold us down and pin us down. That's what they are. That's where they're coming from. And some of us, not all of us, in this group have a strong belief in God. A belief that the world did not come into being as an accident and will suddenly just explode out, and that we are all just molecules and it's all over. And there are few artists that I know, or few musicians in rock and roll Amsterdam who are not aware on that level of the third side of the human being, the spirit. Music surely is the reminder that mankind is more than just flesh and bones. That is the reminder. But my belief, and I can only speak for myself, our beliefs vary and differ in this group. And some people, it's not a hell, are very personal. So I don't talk about things like that.
You feel it's a completely separate domain from the music then? I mean,
it's not separate. Obviously, it's an
life.
individual thing. So different people have got different beliefs and believe in different things. It's not a Christian band. A lot of people sort of say, use words, frightening words like reborn Christian. So it is not. It is not like that. It's an individual thing, and obviously it affects the music. It's like if you live in Ireland, it's going to affect your music. If you believe in anything, it's going to affect your music. Obviously, it impacts it.
See, our country, we don't consider ourselves very religious people. In our country, religion has cut people in two, cut our country in two. And I am the son of a marriage between a Protestant and a Catholic, which in our country is quite peculiar. And I grew up with an anger against the farcical nature of a lot of religion. And what I'm more interested in is the root of those beliefs, not the edifice that people build. And for instance, I look to, when we go to America and we turn on the television set, it appalls me.
Soapbox
It frightens me to see men in three-piece suits ram something that I believe is quite powerful down my throat, and I don't like anybody ramming anything down my throat. And so it's a very, very, very mixed issue, this. It's very complex, and not something you can talk about in 3 minutes.
Yeah, but you do incorporate it into the music, though. Like with 40.
It's in our life. It's in my life. I write lyrics autobiographically. Anything that happens in my life is reflected in the work that I do. And the same goes for, would have gone for John Lennon. John Lennon. Same would have gone for Bob Dylan. I was thinking yesterday, but there's a book out on John Lennon, which is supposedly exposing, him and his lifestyle, which is to tell the world that John Lennon, wasn't just the leader of the Beatles. Really, he was reprobate,
raving homosexual.
Is that really? Yeah, homosexual, everything. Just the thing about it is the reason this book, I would hope, will not be successful, is because we already know that. John Lennon, he told us. It's very important, to understand. His life was in his music. Nothing was held back, and that's what separates somebody like a Bob Dylan or a John Lennon or whatever from all the rest. That to me is the X factor, because I'm tired. I'm sick and tired of going to concerts and seeing people hiding running away from themselves, putting on, like clothes hangers, putting on a suit, putting on a mask, putting on their shoes, walking into another character onto stage, adopting stances that are fashionable or favourable with the audience, and losing themselves. David Bowie recently mentioned that it's about time I became David Bowie. After all these years, it's about time I become David Bowie. I've lost myself so much. That's what I want from rock and roll. That is what U2 is about. To understand this is to understand U2. That is the X factor. And that's what I look for in groups, the X factor. One moment of reality or truth from that person. When I see a singer, I can tell. When I go to a concert, I can tell if that guy is reading his lines. May read them beautifully. And I like pop music. I don't mind pop music. But it's not. That's what I call. That is when you sell yourself out. And U2 has not done that.
Isn't the facade or the persona a classic element of performance or in theatre?
But not of soul music. Maybe if it is of theatre. For me, I believe U2 are a soul group. Not black. Talked about this a lot because it's very important. Not black or white. That's not important. But soul music is when you reveal rather than conceal. Soul music is when you bring from the inside to the outside. That's soul music. Bruce Springsteen is a soul singer. He hides his emotions in characters like a novelist would in his characters. But it's him. It's him in there. And I would aspire to being a soul singer. I'm not saying I am yet. When I walk on stage is to break loose, to break free. And that is what the audience relates to. And that is what rock and roll is all. That is what is rock and roll. Rock and roll came from soul music, gospel music, blues. Okay, and I was saying to somebody yesterday how conservative are the times we live in. They're just the same as the 50s and 60s when rock and roll was born. You just think about it. Think about Bill Haley and the Comets, Buddy Holly, all in suits and ties, okay, all singing "Pretty Woman," walking down the street, or sort of going to rock around the clock tonight. Orchestras, the big band. That's what was happening in America in the 50s. Haircuts, Sweetie Pie, everything like this. Okay, what happens? Right, James Brown, right, Little Richard, okay, or even white guys like Jerry Lee Lewis. Goodness gracious, great balls, just ripping himself out of himself, tearing his heart out, throwing it on the stage, himself sweating profusely, ripping off his tie. That's rock and roll. And everyone else went, oh my goodness, and they felt shocked. And so when Elvis Presley was on the Ed Sullivan Show, they only showed his face up. That's rock and roll. And as I was saying yesterday to somebody, it's the same now in the 80s. When U2 walk out on stage, and we and you get that release. Some people can't take it. They would prefer the mockery, the sort of the ritual, the star. I feel much safer like that. Soul music frightens. Soul music has the effect of either waking you up, smack, 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 or making you leave the room because you know. And I've found the times are very conservative now, and that's why youth is very important. Our approach. It's a long answer to a short question, if you don't mind.
Quite all right. This is going to overlap somewhat with what we were just talking about. You did 40 at the end of the concert, apparently. And here in Japan, there's not that much concern with religion as we know it, as it's known in the Western world. And it might be kind of a rough question because you haven't been here that long and you're not familiar with the country, but how do you feel about performing something like this in a country like Japan, where there's, first of all, very little interest in Christianity or in established religions of any kind? It's kind of an open question.
I don't think. I think it's very short-sighted of people to think that the end of the show, you know, you two play a religious piece of music. You know, let people look at it like it's all religious or none of it's religious. I mean, let's not try and separate that song. Sunday Bloody Sunday is an angry, aggressive song about the country we live in. It's just the same. So I can't answer that question. If you want to ask me the question, what is it like to... What you're really asking is, what is it like to be U2 in Japan? And it feels really good because people are the same the world over. Same. We're all flesh and blood. Everybody has the same hungers and thirsts and needs and wants. And music, Bob Dylan once said music is a healing force. I believe so. And it's the same wherever you go. It's very, you know, I really must make this clear. If people start to think of this as a, you know, this song as this is a religious song and this one isn't, or this is a religious group and this one isn't, they're really misunderstanding what this group's about. You know,
you've got to bear in mind though that there are so many elements of your music that people like that they're going to want to find handles and places to grab onto the music, you know, clues. So I think, you know, as far as he's concerned, he wants to hit you from different angles.
I'm like that. Yeah. I like that. I mean, I like the fact that he is interested in what we're interested in, which is finding out what is behind the music. I like that. But, you know, I mustn't take away from the greyness of our music by making something black and white. If that makes sense. So important for me. So important for you to always the details that they deserve much more than words. That's why we make music.
I'm just curious, you've been doing most of the talking here, and I guess you pretty much speak for the band, but what about you, Larry? What do you like best about U2? What are your aims in U2? Your goals? Or do you just consider yourself a musician and just want to be playing the music? Or?
Yeah, I'm a musician, but I think the music's, you know, the music has got the spirit as well, if you know what I mean. And my aims are the same. Obviously, Bono writes the lyrics, and he's best that we all talk about it and be to it and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, we don't agree on everything. Don't sort of say, yes, we're all behind Bono. That's not the way it is. It's four individuals in the band, you know. And I think, you know, in the interview, it's when somebody asks questions like, you know, about your music, and they take angles on it, sometimes I sort of feel, well, sometimes you try and justify it, and I don't want to ever have to try and justify the music. It doesn't need justification. The justification is the fact that we're here and we're playing to sell out halls. You know, the reason I'm not talking as much as Bono is because I'm not good in the mornings. He's much better in the mornings than I am.
He wakes up about 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock now. I'll be worried.
ステージでね
Apparently you did a cover of The Midnight Hour in your concert there the other night.
It was just in a break of the song. It wasn't a cover.
Okay, it wasn't a cover, but did you...
It was just some phrases, just as a reference to what we were talking about.
Right, soul, being a soul band.
Yeah,
so kind
just
of
freaks people out. It just blows their mind. Like, what is going on here?
Kind of an inside
I thought this
joke.
was a punk band, or, you know... So, you know, I like things like that.
What about your roots? Where did it mostly start out for you guys? Just I guess I should ask you separately. Because I would imagine it's completely different.
Well, he's our root. And Larry was the only person who could play. We formed around the drum kit, so you should ask him. Whoops! Ooh, I nearly went out the window. I can fly too.
Unfortunately, I missed a lot. I mean, a lot of bands, a lot of the new bands, and I sort of tell about the roots and all the sort of the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and all that. Unfortunately, I didn't. I was too young to get onto that. I came into it was a Bowie. That's what I got. I remember
Early
this
70s.
Bowie, early 70s bands like bands like the Sweet, T-Rex, Roxy Music, all those type of bands, and that's the sort of stuff I was listening to. And whereas a lot of these guys had been listening to the Stones, and Adam had been listening to a lot of psychedelic type music.
Is that right?
Yeah, so we all came from totally different places. None of us could play. I had learned how to play the military.
What's going on there?
I learned how to play military type style music, so I was into my drums, if you know what I mean. Like, and when we came around, started the band, came around, I could play edge cut, and then we started to listen to each other. We learned how to play together, and all the influences were left outside. Yeah, so when people say who were your greatest influences, you know, we usually say they are each other, and still are. Obviously, we started to listen to more music. We couldn't afford it at the time. We couldn't afford to buy a record. Like, it was borrowing mix from up the road or whatever. You know.
Is it a common thing in Ireland for kids to get together and have garage bands? Just live like
Yeah, there are quite a few, and a lot more now than ever because the unemployment and all that sort of stuff, and people see it as an escape, a way out. You know,
Yeah, play football or music.
Play football and music, you know, and that's fair enough, you know, if it gets people up. I mean, there's so many people who actually just sit back and sort of say, oh, everything's terrible, man, you know, let's drop out, you know. I much prefer to see someone picking up a guitar and saying, well, I'm going to fight it anyway, you know, right?
You know, what separated you two from a lot of the other groups that formed garage bands was that because we couldn't play other people's music, we wrote our own songs. Because we couldn't play other people's songs, we wrote our own songs. And that was what it was. With our 3 chords, you know, we had something. There was a spark. With those 3 chords, there was something. It's only now you realise that Buddy Holly wrote all his songs on 3 chords. And, you know, so it's so important. You know, technique is just unimportant. You know, somebody said something once. They said it's not the how, it's the why. Intent is nearly as important as content, I think.
Here's you're somewhat of a what do you call it? Using the word heretic when you were a kid. Seems like sort of a wild type when you were a kid.
Well, there are different ways of being wild. The LP Boy, I suppose, is a record of a lot of mental and sometimes physical instability. You know, like there have been times where I felt completely out of control of myself, and still at times I have to fight with myself to contain a feeling. And there have been times where the drum kit has ended in the audience. There have been times where the whole band has ended up in the audience, with me throwing them into the audience. There has been times when I have felt like I wanted to go out on stage like I'm never coming back. And however, I've changed a lot. I've tried to put a lot of those, that adrenaline can go right or it can go wrong. It has gone wrong in me occasionally, but now I try to channel it into right, positive rather than negative. Some friends I grew up in an area of Dublin, was in between a high-rise development, massive high-rise development, and another area which was really, really quite violent. Though my own area wasn't very violent, it was in between. So you used to get beaten up by one gang or the other, It was hard. When people would walk into your area and they asked you where you were from, you didn't know whether to say Ballymun, in case you were beaten up by the Finglas boot boys, or whether to say Finglas and get beaten up by the Ballymun boot boys. And there was a lot of us really resented that type of aggression. And in fact, you may have heard of a group called the Virgin Prunes.
Sure.
I don't know if you have.
Sure.
Well, the Edge's brother is the guitar player in the Virgin Prunes. And I grew up with that, with all those people. We all lived on the same street. And in our country, and in Dublin, in my city, the trend was to grow up, to get a job, be it a good job or a bad job, to go out drinking Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, go out with the wife Monday night, go back out drinking Tuesday night. We just resented that. I refused to be soaked up into that lifestyle that I felt was empty, and we all did. And we invented our own sort of subculture, really, if you like. And we called it Lipton Village. And it was like an imaginary place where when we were 15 and 16, that we dressed completely differently to everybody else. We didn't get involved in a lot of the aggressive kind of gangs. We weren't involved in street gangs. We had our own gang, but it was more like a dada gang.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we used to do things. Our way of fighting back was to parody what we saw around us, or mock it. We were very cynical, and I resent that now, that we were so cynical, and we mocked and jeered the world around us. And we would walk behind people, as they smoked, their cigarettes and macho walks, and we'd copy them, walking behind them. I remember once we went into a very fashionable area of Dublin, into a city centre restaurant, carrying drills and like electric lawnmowers and hammers and chisels, and oftentimes we put on like theatre in the street. I mean, we're only 15, 16, it's completely idiotic. But it was our way of fighting back.
Did you have any idea of what you'd be doing back then? When you were younger? Why did you get into music? I don't understand. How did that turn into music?
Because I couldn't get into anything else.
Why is it so easy to get into music?
I used to play chess. And when I was about 10 years old, I played tournament chess in a senior league.
Is that right?
Mm.
Huh.
and I was going up for the Irish team and all that sort of thing.
Wow.
And then I lost interest in that, and I couldn't really get interested in my studies as much as I could in the people that were in our school. We all went to the same school. We all went to this. It was an experimental school in that it was the first co-educational, multi-denominational school in the country. You know, previously the Irish authorities had believed that if they put girls and boys in the same school, they'd all start mating like rabbits, which was nearly true. But no. And the same with, you know, when you ask me all these questions about religious kind of beliefs, there was no teaching of that nature. Nothing was ever forced upon us. And music was just something we stumbled into, bumped into it. You know, bumped into an instrument, picked it up, put it around us. Adam was the only person with an amplifier, and we all used his amplifier and plugged in. And basically it was a drum kit. We should have called the group the Drum Kit, because that's all we had.
There must have been some sort of decisive factor, something like, you know, maybe the punks or something that led you into music.
Well, this was before punk rock. This was just as punk rock was happening, and sort of, you know, we had these feelings. We had this similar feelings, and then we started to read about other groups forming in England, like the Jam or the Sex Pistols, the Ramones. And we thought, well, this is the way this is.
But also there was a fact Bono mentioned earlier on, and that was when we did come together. Like, yeah, it was all, you know, for school kids to come together, pick up guitars. We've heard it all before. But because we couldn't play, and because we couldn't play other people's songs, and when we started writing our own songs, we knew there was something there. There was a spark there right from the beginning, and suddenly there was a belief. The 4 people in the band had a belief, and we were a unit right away from the beginning. It didn't just happen. It was like as if we were friends first of all, before the band ever became successful or anything like that. And there was a belief in the band, and that we were writing our own songs. So it was a spark, and we were going to work on that. And we knew we had, you know, we could be better. And we saw all this, the satin pants, rock music, rock star hero, and then suddenly punk rock happened. That's it. That's what we want, you know. And we worked with that, and then broke away from that
Because the satin pants were replaced by leather pants.
Yeah. It became as bad, one as bad as the other.
As George Orwell says, the pigs became farmers. The end of 1984, the pigs became farmers was the same. A lot of the groups that we grew up with were our contemporaries. Just got into the Star Trek like all those other groups that they were originally meant to replace.
The most frightening thing for me, I think, around that time was, you know, you'd heard about all the rock bands and all the drugs, you know, heroin and all that, and everyone says, you know, rock music is this. And suddenly punk rock came, and it was rebellion. It was sort of saying, we're finished with all that. And then I remember reading in the paper that Sid Vicious had died from shooting up heroin. And that just, like, that's what lost it for me. I just said, I don't believe in it anymore. You know, it was like it was a con.
Because originally punk rock was a shot of adrenaline, not a shot of heroin. That's what it was meant. It was against mega heavy rock and roll stars. It was against all that, and then it just became that. So that was that. We got interested in a lot of the New York groups, like Patti Smith Group, Tom Verlaine's Television. They were essential influences for us as we developed our own style. Because originally we were just like 3-chord thrash merchants. You know, we used to walk up on stage and for a half an hour just shout at people. It was just like walked up in these, when we used to play, just and there was just drums everywhere and sort of guitars going everywhere. And I used to work myself into such a fit, right, that I would exhaust myself after half an hour, and I'd be on my back like this. And that's when 2 people used to get up out of the audience two of my friends, and those people were the two singers in the Virgin Prunes.
Is that right?
Yeah, they used to get up out of the audience and take over the microphone, and they used to stand over my limp, sweaty, smelly body and sing. And
I think that's a bit overgenerous.
well, they didn't sing then. They also shouted or rap. Sort of an experiment from our point of view, but we felt the guitar broke down in the middle of it. It was good. That was probably the best thing that could happen.
Would you do it again?
No.
You wouldn't. I don't know. As rock musicians, it would be impossible to survive, at least financially, without commercialism of the business. At least commercialism on the level of publicity and whatnot.
Yeah.
It must be rough to keep a distance from that. In other words, not get too sucked into it, but then again, utilize it to the extent that you can further your own career or your own following and whatnot. How do you maintain your stance? What sort of stance do you maintain?
I think a mistake a lot of artists make is that they say, this music, this is art. The business, I have a manager, I have a record company, I have an agent, and they are machines that I put my art through to get to the masses. Now, we don't look at it like that. We look at some aspects of the business as also part of the art.
A little background here was a magazine he started himself about 10 years ago because he was very dissatisfied with the journalism here in Japan concerning rock. And it was mainly composed of articles and whatnot by fans of music, and sort of a journal in that sense. And it has since been polished into this kind of a thing, although it's still based on articles written by
contributors.
Yeah, contributors.
Yeah, when we came to Japan, it was one of the magazines one of the few magazines we really liked. We really like this magazine. This is a very good magazine.
No, it's just that the chair was here.
And the groups that are in this magazine are groups that in some ways we feel a bit of an affiliation towards. We were very concerned that you two should be put in with a lot of other pop groups and sort of smiling pretty boys and sort of, we just wanted to separate from them. I like this magazine. I think it's a good one. We've been asking about it for the last week.
Is that right?
About doing this interview.
Yeah,
Ellen Newberry.
It's a readership based on university students who are looking very forward to this interview. So.
Well, so
he was told to hold back on this one. Actually, he saw your concert on the third day. Apparently, on the first day, you made a comment about the TV appearance.
Yes, how you two had entered the world of show business.
Right, and he was wondering if this is something you do wherever you go. Is it like
TV like that?
Yeah, like that kind of TV program. Because that's the typical really pop, pretty boy type of program.
Yeah.
To see you guys on that was sort of incongruent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we made the comment, and that's why, because in fact we had the way we felt about the show was somebody sent us over a cassette of the show, and it was so incongruous that it appealed to us. we thought this is it was so bizarre, with all the people in the evening dress and everything, that we could get into it, So that's why we brought our cameras and we took photographs of the people, and we decided to play the role of tourists, shake everybody's hands, and we told them that we'd always wanted to meet them and everything. It was sort of
kind of sees you guys on that sort of a, I don't know what you call it, maybe a conveyor belt. And he's wondering, how do you see yourself in 5 years?
How do you see yourself in 5 years? I mean, I have enough trouble trying to see myself in the mirror at the moment, you know what I mean? Or having time. We don't think about the future to a great extent. We have some sort of goal, you know, some sort of goal, like a light in the distance that we go for. But as I was saying to somebody recently, it's not where we're going so much as how we get there. It's an exercise in four people. I mean, what U2 is about. Talk about the anti-hero and the hero. If there's any heroism in U2, is in the music. It's in the emotions. It's in the humanity of the music. As four people, by our very natures, we're hardly cartoon cut-out pop stars. When we started the group, I was 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, and U2 so far has been a learning process for us in many areas, in the creation of music. Remember, you know, we formed U2 before we could play any instruments. So it was learning how to play instruments, learning how to be U2, but also learning about film. We've directed, co-directed all our videos. Learning about graphics, our covers are all designed by us. Learning about business, working out deals. Creativity can be in many, many areas. I wish people would realize this. People often, they work in jobs and they say, my job is no creative. You know, and a writer in a magazine such as Rockin, he also has something to offer. You know what I'm trying to get at.
Sure. It's kind of a typical pattern or routine in rock for the artist to go from the anti-hero to the hero. And